Good morning, everybody. My name's Aaron Jones. I'm a aquaculture technician for Alaska Sea Grant. My colleague here, Ashley Dunker, she is the communications expert, and welcome to another episode of the webinars we've been hosting for the last few months. Today's webinar is from Alicia Bishop. She is the NOAA Fisheries Alaska Regional Aquaculture Coordinator, and she'll be talking about the NOAA Fisheries Opportunities and Grants that they can provide and help with and assist with. I hope you all enjoy it, and at the end of the webinar, we'll be having a question and answer session. You can either just put a hand up, ask a question, or type it into the chat box, and we'll go through them and hopefully tease out some of those ideas and information for you. Thank you.
All right. Hey, everybody. Can you hear me? We good? All right. So thanks, Aaron, for the introduction. My name's Alicia, and happy to be here with you all today. Before we kick off, I just want to say I am not a grant specialist, so I'm going to give you kind of a high-level overview, connect you with some resources. And if there's questions at the end that I can't answer, I will definitely connect you with the right person who can. And depending on our timing today, I'm hoping our grant specialist will be able to join us later for the Q&A session. But with that, I am planning today to kind of walk you through, like I said, at a high level, some of the funding opportunities offered by our agency. Let's see. All right. So today we're going to go through at the national level. So there's resources that are available by NOAA on their website, and then I'm going to take you down to more of a regional level and look at some of those resources that we have on our web pages. We're going to walk through some more specific grants that are administered by our agency. We'll provide you with some contact information and then open things up for Q&A. So first off, at a national level, NOAA Fisheries has a great webpage identifying aquaculture funding opportunities and grants. And I've included that link at the bottom of this page here. Definitely check it out. And that information is going to be organized by, at the top, kind of the NOAA Competitive Grants Program for Aquaculture. And so there'll be, a number of NOAA grants. An example of those is like SK, which we'll talk about more later. There's also the Sea Grant Marine Aquaculture Grant Program, and there'll be links and information on kind of each of those in that section. And then there's the NOAA Financial Assistance Programs. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. There's a guide to federal aquaculture grants and financial assistance services. This is a document you can download, and it's really interesting. It provides it lays out all of the federal aquaculture grants for aquaculture, and it's not just NOAA. So that's going to give you information on USDA, EPA, like all of those federal agencies that maybe have funding, aquaculture funding that could be useful to you. And then at the bottom of this webpage, there's other funding opportunities and additional information. That includes a directory of NOAA Fisheries funding opportunities. So again, a way for you to kind of search through and see what best fits your project ideas. So looking at one of the specific sections, which was on NOAA Fisheries Finance Program, this provides long-term fixed rate loans and for the fishing and aquaculture industries. And I kind of just pulled out the sections that were specific to aquaculture, but it's dealing with refurbishing, modernization, or purchasing of existing fishing vessels, fishing facilities, or aquaculture facilities. And the FFP will also refinance existing debt incurred for those purposes, but the FFP will not finance a vessel refurbishing project that is really designed to kind of increase harvesting capacity. So just some things to know about that long-term fixed rate loans offered. And if you want additional information about that fisheries finance program, we've included the national point of contact here, which is Earl Bennett. And we also have a more regional point of contact through the Northwest Financial Services. So the Seattle office also covers Alaska. So there's a phone number there if you want a more local contact. Now, going from national more to regional resources, we have also at the Alaska Regional Office set up a web page for you all to kind of identify aquaculture grant opportunities. And at the top, we've included that link here. Check it out. At the top of that web page, there's a funding opportunity search. So again, it's a mechanism for you guys to be able to explore what's out there. You can look up grants by region. You can look up by type, by category, and open date. So that is a nice resource for you to kind of explore what's available and open out there for you guys. We've also included some grant writing resources. So that links to webinars, and other writing basics to help improve your overall grant application. Those are good resources to look at. And then the majority of this webpage is really a large table. And we've structured that to highlight specific aquaculture grant opportunities that are kind of reoccurring. And we'll walk you through that. So you can kind of see a snapshot of what the categories look like in that table at the bottom of this slide. And I think what's really nice about it is that those first kind of 3 columns for category, competition name, and funding source, you can click on that column and it'll reorganize the table based off of that information. So if you're really interested in just looking up categories, for instance, like you just want to know the research grants, you can click on that category and it'll lump all of those together for you. If you want to look something up by competition name, you can click that, or the funding source. So there's different ways you can search through this table to find information that's more relevant to you. And then within that, NOAA facilitates a number of these grants. So this is like a snapshot of what that table looks like. Those categories are really nice because that allows you to focus in on a particular area that is most in alignment with your interests. So if you have a proposal that's more education or outreach oriented, you can just look at those grants relevant to those areas. If you are an industry member and you want to find things that are eligible for industry, you can click that. Tribal governments, restoration or research. So it's a nice way to kind of quickly search through a lot of grant information, but find those that are more aligned with your area of interest. And now we're going to kind of, out of that whole slew of information that's available there, I'm going to walk through a few specific ones that are administered by NOAA. So the Saltonstall Kennedy Grant Program is a really great opportunity. If you haven't applied for an SK grant, you should consider doing so. This is a competitive grant program, but this opportunity has a higher funding source than a lot of other grants. So it can be up to $300,000 per proposal. And it addresses a lot of topics that may be of interest to you, including research and development around harvesting, processing, and marketing. This grant is targeting proposals that directly benefit U.S. fisheries and aquaculture industries and involve the fishing and aquaculture communities. It sets priorities every year, and project periods are usually up to 24 months. So as I mentioned, priorities are set every year. Those can change. For 2023, the priorities were promotion, development, and marketing. And the second one was science or technology that promotes sustainable U.S. seafood production and harvesting. But keep in mind, like for 2024, those priorities may shift. So always, look to see what the priority is and make sure, that's in alignment with your project. In addition, like dollar amounts can change. So as I mentioned, like this year, projects might be up to $300,000. Next year, it might be higher. Maybe there's a $400,000 limit. So those types of things can shift between years. So digging into this a little bit more, under priority 1, which was the promotion, development, and marketing, here's some examples of what types of projects could fall under that. So it could be sustainability labeling, promotion and messaging of best practices for mariculture growth and harvesting. And then under priority 2, most of your aquaculture projects are probably going to fall under priority 2. And this is a pretty broad priority. So it's around science or technology that promotes sustainable U.S. seafood production and harvesting. And I just wanted to note that keep in mind that under this priority, it's going to be your responsibility to explain how your proposal benefits the fishing or aquaculture community and or industry. And connecting your proposal with things like the Alaska Mariculture Development Plan priorities and having industry and community partners can help your proposal be more competitive. For SK eligibility, it's really broad, and basically it's any US citizen or national. You can represent a corporation, a partnership, an association, a nonprofit, or an Indian tribe. You can be a citizen of the Republic of Marshall Islands, Republic of Palau, or the states of Micronesia. But your proposal, must meet one of the program priorities. For this lays out a recent SK timing cycle. And the reason I put this up here is to give you an indication. This is pretty typical of the timing cycles. So typically a notice of funding goes out around, May in the springtime. The pre-proposals are usually due around July. Full proposals are due in October. Panel review is conducted around March, and then proposals are peer reviewed. I did want to note that for SK, there's been a recent change in the review process. So they have added an AFAC committee, and that's going to start this December. And the intention behind that was really to incorporate, and have more engagement from industry in that review process. So we'll all kind of have to wait and see, what that looks like and how that kind of impacts this review. But I did want to note that is a new change. And then on average, only 3 Alaska applications are awarded. So that's fisheries and aquaculture. And that's really a shame. Part of that is because we have typically the fewest number of applications submitted for our region. So I think there's a great opportunity to get more SK dollars to Alaska. So definitely consider this grant opportunity in the future. Some previously funded Alaska SK projects include AFDF. They received a number of funds to support the Alaska Mariculture Initiative, and that really kicked off the Mariculture Task Force and the transition to the Alaska Mariculture Alliance. So that was all supported through SK. The university has received, a number of these grants, both for macroalgae and shellfish. The state has received funds through this grant to support genetic work. And then more recently, the Kachemak Bay Kelp Processing and Distribution Hub received funding to help remove bottlenecks in growth in Alaska seaweed. So, again, there's a lot of different projects that could be of interest to you that fall under priorities under SK. And then again, we've provided some points of contact here, both nationally and regionally. Nationally, you can reach out to Cliff Crosgrove, and then regionally, Chris Cecil. And hopefully, like I said, depending on our timing, Chris will be able to join us for our Q&A session. I highly recommend you reach out to these people because, they are here to help you to, improve your grant, to get you information, get advice, get writing tips, get examples. These folks are here to assist you. So definitely, reach out with your questions. Another grant is the Small Business Innovation and Research Grant, or SBIR. And a lot of federal agencies have their own SBIR grants. So NOAA has an SBIR, USDA has an SBIR, the National Science Foundation has an SBIR. If your project qualifies, apply for them all. So, see what's out there, see what's available, and, look for those competitions. So the information that I'm providing here is more specific to the NOAA SBIR, and that's where that link goes to. It'll give you some additional information. And SBIR is really focused on fostering and encouraging participation by small businesses. So they're looking for R&D projects. There's going to be 3 phases of this process, and that's going to encompass kind of more of your concept, feasibility, demonstration projects, and then evaluation of commercial potential and transition to marketplace. As I mentioned, this is a little more information about those 3 phases. So phase 1 is just a conceptual. They're looking at how to support exploration of technical merit or feasibility. Projects typically run around 6 months, and projects can be up to $150,000. Phase 2 projects are where research is actually performed. It's an expansion of your phase 1 concept. The projects can run up to 24 months in duration, and funding is up to $500,000. Phase 3, I don't really understand why it says there's 3 phases, but tells you phase 3 is not funded by SBIR. But think about, this is where you're really kind of moving into that commercial realm. So the first 2 phases are where you have a lot of financial support to kind of build the concept, build the technology. And then when you're ready to, move forward and kind of sell that technology, I think they're just letting you know that's not covered by SBIR. For SBIR eligibility, it's narrower than SK. So you need to be, a for-profit small business, which makes sense since this is, a small business grant. You must have less than 500 employees, more than 50% owned and controlled by US citizens. Work must be performed in the US, and your PI must be employed by the small business more than 50% of the time. I put a big old green flag on this one because I just wanted to let you all know that this funding opportunity is currently open. So this is one you can apply for now. The notice of funding opportunity went out in December. Full applications are due in March. These are only for the phase 1, so those conceptual projects. And I've highlighted this, that in order to be able to submit an application, you have to submit a letter of intent by this Friday via the internet form. So if you're interested in SBIR, don't miss that deadline. And then again, it's going to go through that 3-tiered review for initial review, technical review, and panel review. Your proposals must be responsive to at least one of the research topics identified in that notice of funding opportunity. Approximately 15 to 25 applications are awarded annually. And then if you make it through that first round, you have pretty good odds of getting funding for phase 2, which is pretty exciting. Some previously funded SBIR projects that are related to aquaculture include spawning, detection, and reporting pop-up satellite tags. As you kind of go through this list, you'll see a number of these are related to monitoring. So there's low-cost mooring location beacons, there's development of rapid monitoring systems for detection of pathogens. There's a number of potential topics that fit under SBIR, but these are just some examples of recent aquaculture related projects that were funded. And then again, here's your point of contact for NOAA's SBIR program. You can reach out to Genevieve Lind, and I've included her email here for you. Now we're going to shift to the Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission and their marine aquaculture pilot projects. So this is kind of a unique one. It's not administered by NOAA, but NOAA provides the funding that is then administered by Pacific States. So the funding comes from our Office of Aquaculture, and collectively, Office of Aquaculture and Pacific States have laid out this grant to really promote sustainable farming and business practices along the West Coast, and that includes Alaska and Hawaii. One thing that I would note, there's also a sister agency, the Atlantic States Group. So the nice thing about this is when you're applying for a Pacific States grant, you're just competing kind of with the West Coast. So a lot of these that I've been mentioning, that's a national competition. You're competing across the nation. Here, it's kind of nice because that's narrowing it down a bit to the West Coast states, which could potentially make your proposals more competitive. In addition, Alaska's been pretty successful with this one in the past. So consider checking out information here. I've provided a link that kind of walks you through a little bit more of the background. It also gives you some tables indicating past projects that have been funded, and we're going to go into a couple of those now. But usually 6 to 8 projects are funded annually. So for the Pacific States pilot program, as I mentioned, Alaska has been pretty successful, particularly in the last couple of years. I just pulled out a handful of them. There's more than what's listed here. But, you know, AFDF has had recent success on a project connecting Alaska seaweeds with new markets. We have Kelptastic that was successful in getting funds for workforce training and hands-on seaweed farm. We had Seagrove Kelp Co. that was successful in getting funds for enhancing the efficacy and sustainability of kelp seed production. The Pacific Shellfish Institute had a project on expanding aquaculture potential for California sea cucumber in Alaska and Washington. And Woods Hole was successful in getting funds for rapid seeding of seaweed grow lines in Kodiak. So this is, again, just a handful of recent Alaska projects. Alaska's number of successful projects has definitely gone up in the last couple of years. So, you know, this is a grant worth checking out and learning more about. Annually, at least like this last year, funds were about $590,000 in total. But that means individual projects could be up to $125,000. So with that, there's some more additional information for Pacific States. So you can reach out to Michael, and he's also the person during the funding cycle that can answer questions for you. But here's his contact information to learn more about the Pacific States pilot program. And with that, I can open things up to questions.
Excellent. Thanks, Alicia. Now, we do have one question from Mark Wheeler. Is there a phase 0 grant? And I think that was referring to the SBIR grants.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, phase 1 is still conceptual. So, you know, if I would kind of consider that more of, I think what you're describing here is phase 0, because phase 2 is where you're actually conducting research. Phase 1 is more of your concept for the project. So I would say that might fit under what they're calling phase 1.
Okay.
It's actually, I've applied for them in the past, and it's a very small grant. It's like $5,000 just to give you the funding to put together your proposal.
Oh, okay.
SBIR has that in other areas. I'm not sure if it has it for NOAA's.
Yeah,
program.
maybe that's something that our agency doesn't do. But the document that I mentioned early on that you could download off of that national webpage, that gives you information and contacts for all of the SBIRs. So you can check that for, you know, USDA's or NOAA's or, you know, the National Science Foundation. Like you said, some of those other SBIR operations might have more of a phase 0, but that wasn't mentioned in NOAA's.
Okay, I will jump in. I have a couple of questions, or just one mainly is with the SK grant and even with the SBIR, would that, you mentioned it helps private businesses. For example, if somebody wanted to set up a oyster depuration plant and they can show that it would benefit the industry, but they are essentially could be cornering the market, is that still acceptable?
I am not sure. I'd have to go to like our point of contact on that one. Not sure about that.
Yeah, sorry, I thought that would be a bit of a hard one. It's a question that's popped up a couple of times in my career.
If Chris joins us in like 5 minutes, we might be able to ping her with that one. I can just maybe share some information of, working in grants in the past. I think the more you can connect with industry members and have those as partners, the more you can connect with community members and have letters of support for your proposals, I think also helps things move forward and be more competitive. And then, as I mentioned, when I think it was SK, when they're specifically looking for your connection to industry and community, if you can try to connect to things like the mariculture development plan and identify how your work is going to connect to a priority, that can be really helpful too, because that's kind of showing that you've done your due diligence to see what the needs are out there, and your work is trying to connect and advance things that the broader industry is saying is important.
Does anyone else have any questions, any thoughts or comments for the group? Any experiences they'd like to share with this grant writing process or anything?
Who do we contact for this?
If you have additional questions, I had my contact information and our grant specialist, Chris Cecil, on the PowerPoint presentation. Aaron, are you guys making those available to everybody, the presentations?
Yes, we are. So it will be available shortly after we finish up here.
So you guys will have access to that presentation. And then I provided points of contact for each of those specific grants that I went through. So if you're interested in applying to, SK, there's, points of contact for SK or SBIR. And then if you have more general questions, you can reach out to our grant specialist too.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mark, I'll look into that about phase 0 or to see what other opportunities there are with NOAA to kind of help out with preparing your proposal.
It's probably too late though, because the deadline's tomorrow for the phase 1, right?
Right. But that's just your letter of intent.
Oh, okay.
That's not your proposal. I think that was due in March. I'd have to look back at that slide. So your letter of intent is due tomorrow. So that shouldn't be a big lift. And then, yeah, the other thing to keep in mind, while a number of these, aren't open currently, almost all of the ones that I addressed today, those are going to be annual grants. So if you check out that website link that I provided for you, the column on frequency is going to tell you like, hey, this typically comes out in the summer, or this typically comes out in the fall, or, when things are usually due, because they usually follow a pretty similar cycle. So definitely check that out so that you are kind of prepared and ready to go, because sometimes, yeah, these opening windows can sneak up on you. The other piece of advice I'd throw out there is that I usually try to send out these notice of funding opportunities. So if you would like to make sure you're kind of included on those emails, definitely feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to add you to our list.
Okay, we're just waiting to. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Was there a deadline for the initial?
The one that I was just talking about, the deadline for your letter of intent is tomorrow. So that one's coming up pretty rapidly, but the proposal isn't due until March.
Okay, thank you.
And then I was reading the question about the plate freezer and kelp drying line. Can it be funded 50-50 grants and loans? I would believe so. Typically in those grants, they're just going to ask, are you leveraging kind of other funding sources? So, you would just identify if you're, getting funding from another source and how you're using that and how that connects with the additional funding that you're requesting under the grant. So that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Alicia, and thank you again, everybody, for joining in. I hope you learned something. I know I did, and we will be posting up the PowerPoint slide deck shortly. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to Sea Grant, to myself, or Melissa Good. You'll find our contact details on the Sea Grant webpage, and we'll endeavour to answer anything you need to know about it. Once again, thank you, everybody, and I hope you learned something.